Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Favi, and welcome to Arrows DIY. On my channel, I love creating Dollar Tree DIYs, high-end dupes, thrift flips, and the occasional trash or treasure. Here's another episode in my fall series, and today I have a whole bunch of beautiful vintage decor. These decor are made using dollar store items as well as thrifted items, so you gotta let me know which one is your favorite in the comments below. I got together with a group of my friends, talented group, Jackie from Jackie Burns Creations, MaryBeth of MB Gray Designs, and the lovely Indiana Jones is hosting with me today. Please check out their beautiful creations in the videos linked below, as well as the playlist link. Alright, so let's get started. At Family Dollar, I found this beautiful door home decor. It's a hanging decor for $5, but I got it for $3, and I thought that this would be awesome for fall. So I started off by taking off the tag as well as this welcome sign. It was fairly easy to take off. It was like made out of cardboard. So I suggest maybe using some water, but it was very easy to take off. Maybe spritzing it with some water if you'd like, because it's cardboard. Anyways, I removed it with my scraper, with my trusty scraper, and some sandpaper after. Next, I took off the hardware, and now I'm just using some tape to hold my screws and everything in place because I'm that lady who always misplaces the screws. Now I'm using some sandpaper to sand off any residue, have a nice beautiful canvas for painting. Before I paint this beautiful door, I'm going to start off by adding some of this. I also got this at Family Dollar, and it's some self-adhesive wall tile. I thought the pattern was very vintage, and I'm so excited to finally get to use this in a fall project. So I start off by taking off the backing. It has like a plastic film in the back, and this is going to help us adhere this tile nice and sturdy on this sign. Once we got that backing off, I just kind of lined it up on my project, and I'm going to cut just using my scissors on the outside of that line. I make sure to measure my tile to the piece after every cut to make sure everything is centered and the way I like it. So now I decided to use my paper cutter. I got this on Amazon. It's very handy. It's for paper crafting, but I figured it would help me make a nice straight line because I'm straight lined challenged. Can I get an amen? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this like so. And whenever I make a cut, I make sure to make a cut at the top of it as well as the bottom of it, taking little tiny pieces at a time. It's very important to hold it down firmly. Press down that piece that you lower on the paper cutter and hold it down very firmly as you slice. You want to put pressure on that orange blade part to ensure a clean cut. Now I just lined up this piece of tile that was left over, and I made some marks where the top corner and the bottom corner of that triangle meet. So now I'm just going to use the paper cutter, and I'm going to slice a straight line from the outer corner of the triangle to that little notch we made at the center. And like I said, after every cut, just make sure that it's perfectly sized for your piece. If it's not, you could take off little pieces at a time. Now, if you notice, it has a little bit of a rounded corner on the frame of the door. So you also want to make sure to cut off a little bit and round off those pointy edges on the triangle for a good fit. Now it's okay if there's a little bit of a empty space because we're going to paint it in a little bit, and it's just going to look like it's part of the design. I also used the other leftover piece, and I just sliced it right in half like so. This entire door was made with one wall tile, which I think is pretty resourceful. My kind of project. Now I just size it up like so, trying to center this wall tile to the best of my ability. I used my pencil to make a little marking where the center of the triangle was, that pointy section. And just as before, I press firmly and slice the paper cutter. It's very simple with this tool. I recommend using it. Just make sure to press firmly when you slice it. So I did the same thing for both sides. Now to adhere this to the door, I used some Aleene's tacky glue. You don't want to use hot glue because it will melt this plastic wall tile. I have used hot glue in the past. Just make sure it's low temperature hot glue in the corners maybe, but I think using some industrial strength glue or some Aleene's tacky glue works just fine. So I do this for all of these wall tile pieces on this frame. Now I'm going in with some of this folk art brushed bronze in the brushed metal lined paints, and I love this color. You'll see in a second. It took about 3 coats, but I'm just going to show you here a little tiny bit of the painting. And I just love the color and dimension that this bronze color gives. I think it's perfect for fall. So I go on with my favorite paintbrush, which has been tortured, but I love this bronze. So when you give it the first coat, it's not going to give full coverage, but you just want to continue adding layers, letting them dry very well in between. If you don't let it dry, it's just going to be taking off your paint. So just give it one rough coat and then come back after and give it another 2 or 3 coats, depending on how much coverage you want on your piece. And remember, if you don't like bronze, you can use any color, your favorite fall color. So now I'm just wiping off some of the residue that might have got over the edge, because I want this to be very clean and have no smudges or any raised areas on my frame. So this is just giving the second coat of paint on all of the edges. And once I was happy with the coverage, this is what it looked like. I just think it's so beautiful. The bronze color makes it look so much more high-end, in my opinion. Now to add to the dimension and make it look more expensive, we're going to be using some antiquing wax. So I took a baby wipe and some antiquing wax, and I lightly distressed the center. And you just want to use a circular motion. You can add as little or as much as you want. The more antiquing wax you add, obviously the more aged this will look, but I like a really high definition, so I put many layers, adding little bits in different sections. I went a little heavier on the edges, on the corners of the tile, because those are the most prominent areas. I'm going to be putting a wreath on this, the same wreath that came on. I'm going to put it back on with just a few alterations to suit my style. So I'm just going to go in, as you can see, and just rub this wax. So wax on, wax off. If you want your wax to have more dimension, you want to leave your wax on a little longer. Let it dry a little tiny bit, I would say for about 2 minutes, and then wipe it off. But do you see the dimension that it adds? I just love all the waxes from this folk art line. Any wax, really. Any company's wax. It's just the effect that wax gives your project is uncomparable. I mean, I'm not even sure if that's a word, but I really love antiquing wax. So as you can see, I do this for all the little sections. And when you get to the corner parts, you're going to want to take your baby wipe and kind of fold it into a pointy shape. So you kind of roll the end. So you kind of want to roll your baby wipe into a cone shape just to get into the corners and the edges of your piece. You don't want to keep too much wax accumulated in any of the spaces. So be sure to do a really good job at rubbing your antiquing wax in some of the flat areas. It's okay if you have some buildup in the creases, but you do want to make it look rubbed and polished. The antiquing wax is also going to protect your piece. It's going to protect your paint job. The longer you let the antiquing wax sit, the darker the antiquing wax effect. So now I wasn't sure about the color for the door. So I have this little trick that I used in this video. Just want to share with you. I took some masking tape and I just added it to this, and I painted it in different colors, and once it was dry, I taped on the color to the actual piece. I covered the sides and got really close to a camera so I can get an idea of what it would look like if I painted this color. Not only did this save me time, it also saves you paint. So I got to see, with the wreath in position, I got to get a sense of what it would look like if I were to choose that color. And I went with the light gray, but it was a battle between the light gray and the antiquing wax black paint. I even called a friend. I actually called MaryBeth, who also made a video, so be sure to check out all of the ladies in this playlist. They've all made some beautiful vintage fall creations. So I ended up going with none of those colors, but with French linen. So I'm using the chalk paint French linen, and I give it 2 coats after I give it a base coat of white acrylic paint in a matte finish. So now I'm taking the hardware that came on the door, and I'm just distressing it with some black paint and kind of dabbing it off with the same baby wipe. And I let it dry really, really well. Now I'm going to peel off the painter's tape while the paint is still wet. I didn't want the paint sticking to the tape and causing some weird I didn't want the paint to stick to the painter's tape, so I always like taking off the painter's tape while the paint is still wet. Just be careful if you dirty your hands that you don't dirty your project with the wet paint. But I'm loving the contrast of these 2 colors for the fall. I feel like it makes the wreath pop. So now once everything is nice and dry, I'm going to add the hardware back on. And I'm also going to hot glue the wreath back in place. But first, I added some antiquing wax to those bolts to help give it that aged look and help them not look so stark silver. So once I do that, then I go and add on the wreath. And I really love this wreath. Now, I wasn't sure about the colors of the wreath, but I already, in my next video for tomorrow, I have another wreath that I made, so I wanted this one to be a little different than the one I made for tomorrow's video. So tune in tomorrow if you want to see more fall inspiration. So here I am just adding some hot glue in the spots where the hot glue was already. Now for me, I added the hot glue in the same areas that the hot glue was originally. That way I know that it's gonna have contact with the piece. So basically you're just gonna add some hot glue to the same areas of the wreath. And then I'm just gonna press it firmly, making sure that that center design on the wall tile is fully visible. Now I'm gonna add some of this sheer ribbon from Dollar Tree. I make a simple little bow and I leave the tails very long, and I think it just gives a beautiful Victorian feel. So originally I wanted this collaboration to be vintage Victorian because I just love that aesthetic, but vintage inspirations is fine too. So you see at the top there, I added some Spanish moss to cover that hot glue mess that was there, and I also added a little bit of Spanish moss to the bottom of the wreath between the leaves. And that's how it turned out. You've got to let me know what you think about this one. I really love it. For $4. Not bad. Now for this next project, I'm going to be making a pumpkin. Now I've already given this a base coat of some weird colors in my stash. I was going to make this project last year, but I ran out of time. I'm a busy mom of 5. If you're new around here, hello, welcome. My name is Favi. I love making unique home decor on a budget using thrifted items and Dollar Tree items. So today is no different. I'm going to trace the bottom of this candlestick that I thrifted at a Goodwill, and I'm going to cut it out using my X-Acto knife. Once I go around a couple times with a very sharp X-Acto knife, I'm going to pop out that area. Now I'm going to flip the candlestick over, and I'm going to trace the top of the candlestick, the smaller side of the candlestick. And I'm going to try to center it to the best of my ability, and I'm going to use my pencil to trace it. Now I'm going to cut it off the same way as we did the other side, and that's about that. Now I want to make the candlestick look like a stem for this vintage Victorian look. Now, I'm not going to hot glue it because I love this candlestick. I don't want to destroy it, and I don't want this to be permanent. I love reusing my home decor throughout the seasons. So I'm going to go in with this Nantucket blue chalk paint. I love this color. It dries a lot darker, but it's beautiful. So I'm going to give this all 2 coats. Now, once it's fully coated, I'm going to add this next medium. You got to make sure it's fully dry before you add this medium. This is the Crackle Medium in the medium option. So there's 3 finishes, but I got the medium one. So my crackle size is going to be a medium crackle. Okay. So now I actually tried to pour it on, which is totally fine. I mean, you can pour it on. You just want to minimize your brush strokes, so I thought that it would be helpful to use a foam brush. The instructions say to minimize the brush strokes, so I thought that pouring on a section would be helpful. Now, this is kind of a train wreck. I'm going to show it to you anyways because happy accidents, and on this channel, I just roll with the punches. After this crackle is fully dry, you're going to add on another layer of chalk paint. This crackle finish also works on acrylic paint, but I did not let this crackle fully dry, so do not be deceived. It looks as though it is dry, but it's actually not dry, and you'll see in a moment. I go over this pumpkin with the color French linen, and you'll see in a little bit, it's kind of a disaster. My next pumpkin came out awesome, perfect, but this one was not fully dry. So if you want to know what happens if you don't let your pumpkin fully dry, keep watching. In the next pumpkin, it's awesome. This is my next project. My last project is the perfect crackled pumpkin with more Victorian vibe. So as you can see here, it's a disaster. I actually left this recording by mistake as I was putting my kids to bed. So I just figured I'd add this on here so you can see it as it dried for an hour. And not much happened, but I figured since I had the footage, might as well put it on. Now, while this is fully dry, look how it came out. It's definitely not crackle, but it's definitely some kind of, I thought it looked kind of like a stone, like a marble, salt washed marble. I don't know, it's a pretty cool texture. So if that's what you're going for, don't let your crackle fully dry. Now I just pop that candlestick right back inside because I think it's a beautiful stem, and you could totally use this as a candlestick, but I chose to put some flowers in it, and it's still very wiggly, and I'm not going to hot glue it. So what I opted to do was to flip this thing over and fill it with a plastic bag carefully, just to fill in that empty space and help it stay snug. And it worked perfectly fine. Now, what I love about this particular candlestick, since the bottom is wider than the top, you can actually pick it up and the pumpkin is not going anywhere. It's very snug in place. Now I'm going to cover the gap at the top of the pumpkin with some Spanish moss, and I'm only hot gluing the pumpkin. I'm not putting any hot glue on my candlestick. And once I put the Spanish moss on there, I want to press the Spanish moss under that raised feature there so that you can see more of the candlestick. I love how the candlestick shows under. I love the metal feature that this candlestick adds to the pumpkin. I also embellished it with some simple neutral lace. But I love the metal feature at the top of the stem of the pumpkin as well as the bottom base of the pumpkin. I feel like it's so beautiful, definitely vintage Victorian. Let me know what you think about this train wreck of a crackle. All right, so this is the crackle that actually worked perfectly fine. I'm going to go in with this chalk paint in the color sheepskin. Now, my crackle finish is fully dry. So this pumpkin has a green color Spanish moss. I used the color pine, a chalk paint called pine. And it's a beautiful, deep, rich green color. Then I also added the Crackle Medium on top of that once that was fully dry. Once the Crackle Medium is also fully dry, now I'm going to go in with the sheepskin. And I'm adding a lot of paint so that I minimize my brush strokes. I'm showing you here in real time how I paint it so that you see, and you will see the crackle happen immediately. This is the right way to do the crackle. All right. So as you can see here, I'm putting a lot of paint. Now, the more paint you add, the larger your crackle will be. If you add a thinner layer of chalk paint, the smaller your crackle will be. You'll see in a second. Now, I wanted half of my pumpkin to have a deep crackle because I wanted to see that green pop through. But if you want a very faint and delicate crackle, then you want to keep your paint a little thinner. So here you'll see the difference what I'm saying. This is the thicker crackle side. And you can see more of that green than in that first section. So you want to add a thicker layer of paint. Now I know I applied it on very thick from the beginning, but you want it thicker than that if you want a very deep crackle. Now the Crackle Medium has many finishes. So they even have a smaller crackle finish than this. And they also have a larger crackle, like if you're doing a furniture piece or something. I wanted a medium because I wanted you to be able to tell that it was crackle from far away, but I didn't want the crackle to be overbearing for the project. I've also made a crackle shelf last year. I can link that video in the description box if you want to see crackle on furniture, and if you want to see crackle on acrylic paint. I've also done that on my channel. So here I'm showing you the first project, the difference between the wrong way and the right way to do crackle. So here the deep crackle finishes on both pumpkins. So you see how there's a difference between the thinner and the thicker. Please excuse my antique wax finger. I don't like gloves. Personal preference, I cannot stand gloves. So here I'm just showing you a close-up of what the crackle looks like, and I'm loving it. And now I'm just going to embellish it with some shabby chic Victorian vibes. So I start off with a shelf liner. Yes, shelf liner. Unconventional materials is kind of my thing on my channel as well. If you're new around here, I'm always up to something. All right, so I cut off about 1 inch of the top. I don't even bother to take off the label because it's going to keep it nice and neat in my craft stash. So I just cut off about 1 inch, 1.5 inches roughly, and that's going to be the stem of my pumpkin. Now I'm going to take some of this garland, this maple leaf garland in this beautiful burgundy and green color from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to cut off 2 of the leaves. I chose some leaves that were flatter so that they behaved better on my pumpkin. And now I'm going to cut off 2 little pieces of the same shelf liner just to help layer my design. Now I took some lace from my stash. I got this lace at BB Craft. I'll link it below. I don't think they have this particular lace, but they have a beautiful delicate lace on their website if you want to check it out. And now I'm just picking one spot. I tried to pick a spot where I wasn't too crazy about the crackle finish, and I covered it with this detail. Now I wanted to add a metal finish to all of my fall decor today. So all of my fall decor is going to have some hint of metal in it to help give that Victorian vintage vibe. So I found this snowflake in my stash. I believe it's from Dollar Tree. Don't quote me on that. It was just in my stash. So I just used these gardening shears from Dollar Tree, kind of like these scissors, and it worked pretty well. Now, after I struggled a little bit with those scissors, I just realized that if I just wiggle these metal pieces back and forth, they will pop right off. So I did that for 3 of them, so that the snowflake kind of looks like a leaf now. And then I paint it in the same bronze color. I'm going to use some E6000 because this is metal, and hot glue is not going to work on metal. So I'm going to use some E6000 to hold this snowflake. No, this is not a snowflake anymore. This is a leaf now, a conceptual Victorian vintage leaf. And I'm going to put it on there. Now my paint was still wet and it kind of smudged on my flower, but I love that. It's so weird. I was like, oh, I love how that looks. Like the metal splattered on the... I'm not normal, I know, but I just roll with the punches and I have so much fun creating. I think you should try creating too. Get creative. It's so much fun. Don't sweat the small stuff and make some beautiful home decor on a budget in your home. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten up that shelf liner and hot glue it in place. Then I cut off that ribbon on the end. To add to the shabby chic Victorian vibe, I'm going to add some pearls right around the base of the stem, just to give it some more of that girly Victorian feel. And I really like it. Guys, I really like it. But let me know in the comments below what you think about this one. It was a lot of fun to make, and I just love using this Crackle Medium. If you've never tried it, try using some Crackle. It's amazing. It's a lot of fun. You can definitely customize your colors to your aesthetic. So if you like farmhouse, you could definitely use Crackle. I made a farmhouse shelf last year. It was awesome. I'll be sure to link that below if you want to see that video. But anyways, here are all the creations I made today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments below which one was your favorite from this video. A special thank you to Annie from Crafting with Indiana Jones for hosting with me today. And also to MaryBeth from MB Gray Designs and Jackie from Jackie Burns Creations. Please click the playlist link below to see their beautiful projects. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. As always, friends, thank you so much for watching. Take care, God bless. Catch you on the next one. If you like this video, here's another one you might enjoy.